Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. Introduction to the module. In this module, you will learn about autism, the autism spectrum and the various conditions that form part of the spectrum. We'll investigate the key differences between autism and Asperger's syndrome and look at the 3 subcategories of autism spectrum disorder. At the end of the module, you will complete an assessment. The topics that are covered in this module are: Introduction to Autism, Autism spectrum disorder in adolescents and adults, Conditions and common characteristics of autism spectrum disorder, Autism vs. Asperger's syndrome, Different categories of autism spectrum disorder. Introduction to Autism. Autism is a disability that impacts an individual's communication skills, how they interact with other people and the world around them. The term autism originates from the Greek word autos, which means self, and the suffix ism, which means a state or an action. Autism is generally diagnosed during childhood and is a permanent condition. There is no cure, and often those with a disability feel it is a substantial part of their identity. If you have autism, your experience of the world is very different from someone who does not have autism. Autism may present itself along with other conditions, but it's always possible for the individual to develop and learn over time. If an autistic person receives the right support, they can live a gratifying life. The new name for the condition is Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. ASD has 2 long-term symptoms. 1. Behaviors, activities and interests that are repetitive and restrictive. 2. Issues with interaction and communication. People with the condition may also be a lot more, or a lot less sensitive to touch, color, light, and sound than the general population. The condition may also be called an autism spectrum condition by those who are trying to change perceptions about being autistic. The rationale for this is that autism can bring some cognitive benefits alongside the disabilities. Having autism can feel as if you are playing a game, where you don't understand or know the rules, but everyone else who is playing does. Autism spectrum disorder in adolescents and adults. If you receive a diagnosis of autism, you will have the condition for your entire life. We do not know the cause of the disability, or how to prevent or remedy it. Many people believe that autism is not a disease or an illness that requires a cure. Autistic people can have an excellent quality of life with the right support around them. According to the Autism Society, around 1% of people are someone on the autism spectrum. It is seen more frequently in males than in females. Those with the condition feel it is an innate part of their personality and therefore not something that they wish to cure. The phrase autism spectrum represents the fact that the symptoms of autism can vary from the very severe to the very mild. Every person's experience of the condition is unique, and there are a variety of disabilities that form subcategories of autism. For example, autistic individuals can have no speech or an exceptional vocabulary. Some have a high IQ, while others have considerable impediments to learning. They may be friendly in social situations or prefer to isolate themselves. Conditions and common characteristics of autism spectrum disorder. The autism spectrum contains many recognized conditions. They all share some similarities with autism, while also having specific traits. Asperger's syndrome, AS. With this condition, the individuals become extremely focused on specific topics, which they may end up following as a career. Individuals often have regular to above average intellect, along with ways of speaking that sound highly unusual. They generally find it difficult to understand social cues. High-functioning autism, HFA. High-functioning autism shares similar traits with Asperger's syndrome. However, the child will also develop their language abilities later than we see with Asperger's syndrome. Fragile X syndrome, FXS. Fragile X is a genetic condition which can be present on its own or with autism. The symptoms are similar and range in severity. Symptoms include delays to developing language skills, trouble concentrating, anxiety, trouble making eye contact, difficult social skills, the need for repetition, biting, repeating speech patterns. Landau-Kleffner syndrome, LKS. Children with this condition will begin life making good progress with their speech. Then between 3 and 7 years old they quickly or gradually lose their speech and comprehension skills. They will not respond to sounds and have a rare form of epilepsy from abnormal brain patterns during sleep. Prader-Willi syndrome, PWS. Infants with this condition have issues feeding and become children who obsess over food and may become overweight. These also have the following symptoms: an abnormality with chromosome 15, high pain threshold, tantrums, poor sleep, intellect and development disabilities. Rett syndrome, RS. Rett syndrome is a neurological condition that is more prevalent in females than in males. Symptoms include walking in a way that appears stiff and not stable, walking on toes, body rocking, breathing difficulty, problems sleeping, small head, epilepsy, repetitive hand movements. Tardive syndrome, TED. Individuals with this condition have the common signs of autism, along with blinking, head nodding, facial tics, shuffling as they walk. Some may also have difficulties with breathing, walking, eating, and standing. Williams syndrome, WS. Individuals with this condition are missing part of the DNA on chromosome 7. The typical symptom is intellectual disability. They may display autistic traits as well as problems with their cardiovascular system. Individuals with WS can be highly sociable with a love of music, high calcium levels and distinguishing pixie-like facial features. Pathological demand avoidance, PED. Individuals with this condition feel an intense need to be in control due to anxiety, so they avoid demands made by others. They often have stronger social skills than others on the autism spectrum. Autism versus Asperger's syndrome. Asperger's syndrome is one of the most well-known of the conditions that fall under the autism spectrum. While they share many similarities with autistic people, those with Asperger's differ in the following ways. High performance, for example, their speech is more advanced, although it may sound eccentric. Intense focus on specific topics of interest such as sports or numbers. No delays to their language development unlike with autistic people. They often don't have learning disabilities and have average to above average intellect. They can feel they are different from others and experience mental health issues as a result. In comparison, autistic people may be less friendly in social settings, and they tend to live in their private world. They may not be diagnosed until they reach adult age, or perhaps not at all. The similarities between Asperger's and autism include difficulty with relationships due to not being comfortable with eye contact or able to read body language, trouble understanding feelings, speaking without emotion, taking all language literally, not understanding figures of speech, hand flapping, over or under-sensitive to senses, a need for secure routines without change. Different categories of autism spectrum disorder. There are 3 subcategories within the autism spectrum. 1. Autism disorder. 2. Asperger syndrome. 3. Pervasive development disorder, PDD, the not otherwise specified category. Pervasive development disorder conditions typically have the following symptoms: difficulty with communication, not able to use imagination, struggle with socializing, difficulty understanding the world, unclear thinking, strange ways of playing as a child, possibly difficulty walking, sensitive to routine changes, anxiety, temper, sleeping issues, aggression. Some of the above symptoms sound like autism, but they present with specific issues including cardiovascular issues, distinct facial features and movement issues. Summary. In this module, you have learned: autism is a disability that impacts an individual's communication skills, how they interact with other people and the world around them. Someone who receives a diagnosis of autism will have the condition for their entire life. The autism spectrum contains many recognized conditions. Asperger syndrome shares many similarities with autism, but includes differences such as high performance and intense focus on interests. There are 3 subcategories within the autism spectrum: autism disorder, Asperger syndrome and pervasive development disorder, PDD. With PDD, some of the symptoms sound like autism, but they present with specific issues including cardiovascular issues, distinct facial features and movement issues.